call me Mystic Mac because I predict these things.
Dustin Stoltzfus takes on Nursulton Ruziboev this Saturday at UFC Fight Night Vegas 106. And I've been going back and forth on this fight. I really have. I know Nursulton, he's kind of this surging prospect at the moment. Had some really good wins, had a setback against Joaquin Buckley. Huge for the division at 6'5", fights out of Uzbekistan, tons of fights. Really good fighter, super dangerous, can finish you on the feet, finish you on the ground. Taking on Dustin Stoltzfus, who's been kind of 50-50 in his career. Coming off of a knockout over Marc-Andre Barriault, which I did not see coming. I didn't see him knocking him out that way. I saw Barriault pushing a high pace and winning a decision, and that's what I picked and was proven dead wrong in that one. And when I initially thought of this fight, I thought, Ruziboev will probably keep it on the feet and put him out. Just because Dustin Stoltzfus, his striking is very rudimentary. A jab, kind of a winging right hook, not the most technical guy. Does have power, can hurt guys. Obviously just put out Barriault, but not the better striker on the feet, but by a long shot. And so I was initially leaning Ruziboev, and I'm like, he's 6'5", he's the bigger dude. But then I start looking into it a little bit more. Ruziboev, he's 6'5", but he's got the reach of a guy who's like 6'3". It's crazy. When he fought Joaquin Buckley was 5'10", 7 inches shorter, and they had the same reach, which is just crazy. And so he's not necessarily going to have the reach advantage here against Stoltzfus, who has a 75-inch reach to Ruziboev's 76, but he is going to be having to, punch up. He's going to be 5 inches shorter. He's already not the best, most technical fighter as it is, so having to fight a super long guy who's tall is going to be an issue for him. Ruziboev, very good on the feet, 11 wins by KO, but has 20 wins by sub. And I'm looking at his record, I'm like, this dude has twice as many fights as Stoltzfus, and he's 2 years younger. But then I start going through his record here. Beat Bruno Ferreira, who I'm very high on, caught his kick, landed a counter right, and finished him. Beat Cedric Dumas, which isn't that great in hindsight. Didn't have the best performance against, I think it was Tululin. Got knocked out recently by Mikhail Lachechek. He fought Joaquin Buckley, who I think is very high level. He was hurting Buckley at the beginning, but Buckley got a lot of takedowns on him. He got 4 takedowns on him, and Buckley is not a takedown artist. He's not a wrestler. He's a very high level striker who can wrestle. And then got the win over Eric McConaughey, which I think is a gimme. Guy shouldn't be in the UFC. I think he took it on maybe short notice, but Nursulton was just on another level than him. But then I'm looking through, I'm like, Joaquin Buckley got 4 takedowns on this guy. Dustin Stoltzfus is a good wrestler. And before I get to that, let me get back to Ruziboev's record here. 12-12, he beat this guy 12-12, 13-4, 3-2. Like, dude, you are 40 fights into your career and you're fighting a guy who's 3-2. 20-10, 4-4. Same thing. 8-3, okay, 10-8, 20-25, 18-11, 26-24. In 2019, he fought a guy who was 0-1. And then he fought a guy who was 1-0. And then he lost to a guy that was 6-0, lost to a guy who was 8-4. Lost to a guy who was 18-4. So it's like, it seems like he's losing to kind of guys that aren't that great. He fights a guy who's 18-4, decent record, he loses. And then he's fighting 3-1, 1-1, 4-4, 2-2, 2-0. He did beat a guy who was 10-1. Congratulations. 4-1, 2-0, 3-0, 5-0, 0-0, 0-2, 3-2. 15 fights into his career, he's fighting a guy who's 0-2. So it just seems like a very padded record. A lot of these guys from the European scene at times, and we've seen guys that come into the UFC that get fraud checked, and then we look back at their careers and we're like, okay, this career is very fraud laden. And so I just look at this and I'm like, yeah, he's got tons of fights, but against who? How good are these guys? How legit is this record? But then he does have great wins, like I said, against Ferreira. Looked good against Buckley. And then I think about Dustin Stoltzfus, and I'm like, Dustin Stoltzfus, he's fought, beat Barriault, lost to Bruno Ferreira, but he was having some success on the feet, pushing him back, getting a lot of really good forward pressure on Ferreira. And got a chin on him too, got knocked, hit by that spinning elbow, but never went out. The same with the Abus Magomedov fight, never went out. The dude's tough. He's got a good chin. Even dropped Puna Hela Soriano, but even in that fight was taking strikes from Puna, who, is known as a a brawler with really good power. Recently winning, getting that win over Uros Medic, looking like a world beater since he dropped to 170. And he was picking up and dumping Punahele Soriano in that fight. And I just think, like, if he's picking up Punahele and dumping him, if he's having really good success against Gerald Meerschaert, if he's picking up and slamming Joe Piper, like, maybe he can get Nursulton Ruziboev to the ground the same way that Joaquin Buckley did. He's going to be bigger than Joaquin Buckley. I think he's the better grappler than Joaquin Buckley. Had a really good showing against Gerald Meerschaert. Rodolfo Vieira, not the best, was kind of getting outstruck in that fight just by the jab of Vieira, but again, he was worried about the takedowns the entire time. That kind of completely changes the stand-up. But got beat up by Kyle Dawkins on the feet, who turned out to be not that great. But at times I just see, like, in terms of sheer matchup, grappler and Stoltzfus versus Ruziboev, I see openings for him to get takedowns and have success. Because I feel like he can threaten on the feet. He is tough. He can take a shot. And so part of me thinks that he can get the takedowns in this one and win it against Ruziboev. But I am still going to go with Ruziboev. I can't, regardless of the caliber of fighters, I can't get past the fact that he does have power. He did put out Bruno Ferreira. He did put out Cedric Dumas, even though it was more of an eye poke TKO. He did hurt Buckley. Did get beat by Buckley, but Buckley's good, man. He's really good. I think he's going to fight Usman coming up, maybe, or maybe that fell out. But knocked out Eric McConaughey, so he's still having very good performances in the UFC. And it's hard to look past, a Bruno Ferreira win and kind of the success that he has had since he's come into the UFC and his opponents have been elevated. But just tons of experience, tons of finishing potential. Obviously huge for the division at 6'5". I don't know how he ever made welterweight. And even that fight against Buckley was at welterweight. Now that he's moved up to middleweight, not having to cut as much weight, filling out his frame a little bit, going to be a little bit bigger, a little bit thicker, a little bit more powerful in this one. He's definitely going to be the better striker against Dustin Stoltzfus. And I just don't see him allowing Stoltzfus to kind of get him against the cage or push him around or being able to get close to get the takedown. And even if he does, he's, again, what's he have, 20 submissions in his career? I think he'll be, defensively safe enough on the ground. But I say that, but then he somewhat got controlled by Joaquin Buckley. And I know that he loves his flying knees, which would just be perfect for Dustin Stoltzfus to catch and put him on the ground. Stoltzfus is a jiu-jitsu and luta libre, can never say that word, black belt. He likes to push a high pace with a lot of pressure. Not the best striker, but does put volume out there. He does put volume out there to be judged. He can hurt you. He did, like I said, he did hurt Punahele in that fight. Obviously knocked out Barrialt after a wild scramble. So he can do it. If he connects, he's got really good power. He's a big dude for middleweight. But Nursulton, I think he'll be patient and get the KO over Stoltzfus. He's a very patient fighter, kind of forces guys to come into him and come into his range to where he can hit you, but you can't hit him. And likes to counter on the back foot. And he'll wait for his opportunity. That we've seen that several times in his fights. Just waits for guys to kind of come in. Was really frustrating Buckley with his pace, his slow pace and everything. And again, regardless of the caliber of fighter that he's fighting, he just has tons of experience under his belt. He knows how to get the finish. He knows how to win fights. Training out of, I think he trains with Joe Piper now as well. So the gap in his wrestling that we did see against Buckley, I know, every day he's working to clear that one up. And, Buckley's a powerful dude, and he was just blast doubling him all night. I don't think Stoltzfus isn't going to be able to do that. Stoltzfus likes to, get the body lock on you and dump you. And that's going to be harder to do against a guy who's 6'5". He's like a table. He's hard to tip over. He's always going to be, posting on something. So I'm going to go with Nursulton Ruziboev to get this one done by KO. He's definitely the better striker. I think he can keep it on the feet. I think he can fight at a pace that works for him and not allow Dustin Stoltzfus to push that grindy kind of pace that he likes to do and get guys to the ground. I think he'll be able to stay safe. And I think he'll be able to find Stoltzfus' chin. He has shown to be able to get hit in the past, not exactly put out. He's a tough dude, but can be hit. And I think Ruziboev will find his chin in this one and get the KO. But I do think Stoltzfus is a good dog in this one. I would not be shocked if he was able to out-grapple Nursulton for 3 rounds, or even get the finish, catch him on the feet, you know, threaten with submission or threaten with takedowns, catch him on the feet, beat him up on the ground, find the sub. But I do think Ruziboev probably gets this one done by KO.
You can call me
Thanks.
Mystic Mac because I predict these things.